Rules Committee come to order, and thank you very much for joining us today, Thursday, May the 29th. As we begin, I'd like to invite our witnesses. Go ahead and please have a seat. Before we begin today, I would like to acknowledge the absence of our ranking member. Committee will be in order. I'd like to acknowledge the absence of our ranking member, Louise Slaughter, as she is with her family. And once again, at this time, the grief that is associated with the loss of her husband. And so we will all remember that as we gather again today, that Mrs. Slaughter will be gone for about another week or so, and we're going to miss her, not only during this hearing, but the rest of the week. But I wanted to acknowledge that, if I can, as we're starting. Today, I'd also like to announce that we were very pleased to receive, on behalf of the Rules Committee today, the Congressional Management Foundation's Gold Mouse Award for one of the best committee websites on Capitol Hill. Now, Ed and Tom, this seems like a minor thing, but in fact it's not. One of 4 committees honored by the CMF for our efforts to enhance transparency for our constituents and to provide easily searchable database, legislative database, both archived, current, and what is future. And so I today had a member of their board, Randy Ford, who is the president of National Write Your Congressman from Richardson, Texas, who visited me, and on behalf of the Congressional Management Foundation, gave us this kind award. Now, with this said, perhaps I had something to do with it, but the people who had the most to do with it is our staff, and how they have worked very diligently over the last few years to not only gain some compliance issues, but to make sure that we got better. And in a time of increasing transparency and information that would be wanted by people, we found that we were getting behind in that effort. And so, you know, bingo, somebody gave us credit for it. So I wanted to thank the CMF for the award.
Well, congratulations.
Yes.
You know, Ed, thank you, because, and Tom, as you know, your staffs and so many people on your committees and others count on us being able to timely and effectively providing the information that's necessary, not only about what you're here today for, but also other important opportunities. And so it's nice to, you know, do a lap around the field and then know that you've done something a little bit better. Today our committee is here to consider 2 critically important pieces of legislation. First, the committee will consider H.R. 4745, the Transportation, Housing, Urban Development, and Related Agency Appropriations Act for 2015. This year's third appropriations bill invests in our nation's infrastructure and funds housing programs that protect the most vulnerable Americans and helps them not only with their needs, but also a way that we, from the perspective of helping good policy, can do this through the implementation of wise appropriations. By adequately funding the FAA Next Gen Air Traffic Control System, grant programs designed to improve transit projects, and providing over $40 billion for our nation's highways. H.R. 4745 ensures that our nation can better meet the needs of transportation and to help us sustain the American economy. We need a more robust economy, but we're trying to make sure that we are preparing properly, and certainly that is what the bill is for. Secondly, the committee will consider H.R. 4681, the Intelligence Authorization Act for fiscal years 2014 and 2015. This important bill provides the United States intelligence community with the adequate levels of funding and capacities to protect America as well as its citizens and our friends around the world, and to make sure that we are looking over the horizon to be prepared for future threats that come at our allies and at American citizens at our homeland. In an increasingly complex geopolitical landscape, the United States needs the ability to nimbly respond and adequately prepare for emerging threats, to see these threats and to, once again, know what we should do about them. This bill before us today provides the dedicated personnel and U.S. intelligence community with that ability, I believe, while balancing and protecting American civil liberties and ensuring the rule of law. So I want to thank our colleagues who are joining us today, certainly my dear friend, the gentleman from Iowa, Mr. Latham, and the gentleman, my friend, who flies with me on American Airlines, well within our system on a regular basis, Ed Pasteur, who's from Arizona, the ranking member. They are witnesses today to provide this committee with not only the most leading-edge information and perhaps some of the most important parts of what you're funding and why that's important to the country, but to prepare us adequately for us being on the floor with this important bill that will be before us today. Gentlemen, you are both important to our ability. I will tell you that our minority and majority members, when we do this late in the afternoon, are well into other activities. You will see them sneak in through the door, as the gentleman from Louisville, Texas is, Dr. Michael Burgess, who will get the first opportunity to speak today in questions. Mike used to serve on the Transportation Committee and knows well funding levels and the appropriate level of getting things done in this country, and so we're going to let Mike do that. And our friends that are on the Democrat side will be here. I'm delighted that you're without objection. Anything you have in writing will be entered the record. And the gentleman from Iowa, the chairman of the committee, is now recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I'd like to extend my condolences to Mrs. Slaughter and let her know that she and her family are in all of our thoughts and prayers at this very difficult time for her. And thank the members of the committee for being here and for the opportunity to testify on behalf of the Appropriations Committee in H.R. 4745, the Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development Appropriation Act for fiscal year 2015. Along with Chairman Rogers and I hope my friend and ranking member Mr. Pasteur, I'm requesting an open rule for consideration of the THUD bill. I believe you already have the committee's letter, so I'll keep my remarks brief due to your busy agenda for today. The committee has put forth a bill that conforms to our 302B allocation of $52 billion in budget authority and is in line with the budget cap of 1014. Under such an allocation, we prioritize the programs and spending, and we're able to achieve three really important goals. Continue the OBLM funding levels for MAP 21 contingent upon reauthorization, again, contingent upon reauthorization so that we can get that $40 billion from the trust fund out to the states to continue their projects. Keep the commercial airspace running smoothly. We fully fund the air controllers and to make sure that we don't have any problems in that regard, and to preserve the housing option for all current HUD-assisted families. So we fully fund everybody that currently has vouchers. I think it's a good bill with the allocation that was given to us, but the THUD bill needs to have its day before the whole House of Representatives for full consideration. The Senate is marking up their THUD bill next week and will most likely consider the bill on the floor of the Senate in June. It's imperative that the House has a chance to include its amendments before we get to conference with the Senate. I'd like to thank my friend and fellow future retiree, the gentleman from Arizona, and the THUD ranking member, Mr. Pasteur, for his ideas and support in drafting this bill. He's been a great partner and a very good personal friend. I'd also like to thank Chairman Rogers and Ranking Member Lowy, plus the members of the committee and especially the subcommittee and certainly the staff for all of their hard work in getting the bill to this point. I thank you for your time and favorable consideration of our request, and let's move the bill to the floor. I'm happy to try and answer any questions you may have, and I would yield back at this time.
Chairman, thank you very much. You did mention Ed's last term. We had mentioned your last term. Both of you have been extremely influential in not just the House of Representatives, but back in your districts. You've provided great leadership. I've watched both of you. I've been back in both your districts and have admired both of you. Ed knows that we spent way too much time on some airplanes some years, but it gave us an opportunity to get to know each other. And Tom, certainly our friendship through our avenues has made me a better member also. And so I really do appreciate both of you and recognize that it will be a real loss for the House. But I wish you the very best as you move to that next phase.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Gentleman from Arizona is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Chairman Sessions, and Mr. McGovern. Thank you very much for allowing us to be here this afternoon. I also would like to extend my condolences to the ranking member. I had an opportunity to get to know Bob a little bit, and it's a great loss, not only for Louise, but for all of us who got to know him. And so may he rest in peace, and may Louise be able to come back as quickly as she can. I also want to thank Chairman Latham for his leadership on this committee and subcommittee, and also for his friendship throughout the years. It's been a good partnership, and as he has mentioned, we have worked together, and we deal with concerns, and we have this product before you. Chairman Latham has provided for you an overall summary of the bill. But I have to tell you, he was dealt a difficult hand with this allocation, especially when the FHA receipt estimates from ONB and CBS were so different. This bill is probably $1 billion something below the 2014. Even though the allocation is bigger, in reality, in revenues, it's less by $1 billion. So it was very difficult to mark up this bill. And I have to tell you, when we had the markup at the full committee, there was one Democrat who supported this bill, and that was myself, Mr. Chairman. And I did it because I feel that it's very important that we have regular order and that we also move this bill forward. But knowing the results of that vote that we had at the full committee, this bill is basically on in his last legs in terms of getting support. And so Tom was given a difficult situation, and this bill is basically under life support as we stand today. And I still believe that we can go forward with this bill. The Senate recently announced their allocation, and it's a better allocation. And I believe that when we go forward, that we will end up with a better bill after conference or through the omnibus process. So, Mr. Chairman, knowing that this bill right now probably needs all the help it can get, I would only differ with my chairman in that I would encourage you to either do a closed rule or a rule that will limit the amount of amendments. And the reason I do that is because I know very well that the committee and the chairman have asked for an open rule. I know that you would probably prefer an open rule. But if you believe that this bill deserves a chance to go forward and regular order and hopefully become a better bill, that with an open rule, the reality is, this being an election year, many members on both sides wanting to make amendments for political purposes, messaging purposes, whatever it may be, that this bill may be greatly endangered, and an open rule would increase its agony and maybe create its defeat. And so I make that recommendation to you only because I feel that this bill would need all the help it can get, and I think that's a manner in which we can go forward, and hopefully sometime this fall end up with a better THUD bill that we would all be proud of. And as you said, it would help the people who need to be helped in housing or other programs and our infrastructure development. And so that's my recommendation to you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back my time.
Mr. Pastor, thank you very much. As a matter of fact, I do count on your feedback. And as you know, Ed, you have provided me feedback over lots of things for many years, as has Mr. Latham. We're going to try and proceed as best we can, but I don't take your advice lightly. I do recognize right now we're engaged in open processes on the floor, and we're through most of the day, page 34 of the report, down on the floor right now, and Mr. Wolf is carefully trudging through this process. And yet, as the gentleman, Dan Webster, a guy on this committee, very aptly was noting, that this is an important thing for members to be able to speak and be heard from. And in fact, we do recognize that sometimes this is cumbersome. I tend not to become very weary with that because I want members of Congress to know what they're voting on, read the bills, become engaged, and have a chance to go fight. But your point is well made. It has very little to do with time and a lot to do with the standard of how much money they have to work with. And it is a difficult conundrum that people find themselves in of trying to work through the process. So it could be that we have to reevaluate that. We're going to try and move forward as best we can. I've talked to Mrs. Slaughter a few times, and if I don't, then Mr. McGovern talks with me about open processes, and open processes do take more time. So we're going to take your advice wisely, listen to it, and then certainly Mr. McGovern and I, in the absence of Mrs. Slaughter, would talk through these issues as necessary. Jim is not only very able, but has a capable handle on what he believes is right also to get these processes done, knowing this is to get this to conference, knowing this is to meet our peers on the other side of the building with their effort and our effort to then get to a final answer about our nation's infrastructures, and so it would be a very important thing for us to move through. So I think, Mr. McGovern, if you had not been here and you're here to hear what Ed said, it will probably be a discussion that we may have over the next couple of days as we move forward in this also. So thank you very much. I'll move first. I'll defer my time to the gentleman from Louisville, Texas. Dr. Burgess is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me just say to both of our witnesses today, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Pastor, thank you for your service. You will both be missed here. Chairman Latham, I've enjoyed working with you on a number of issues over the years, and Ed, every time he returns from his district on the weekend, he is good enough to stop at DFW Airport and pick me up as I'm hitchhiking back here to Washington. So thank you, Ed, for always making the plane stop and get me. You actually may have inadvertently answered the one question that I had in conference this morning. Mr. Latham, I thought I heard that that we were $1 billion under last year's bill, and then I read the reports that said we were $1 billion over, and now Mr. Pastor has addressed an issue that I was not aware of. So can you clarify that for me?
Yeah. Actually, the allocation appears to be only $1.2 billion more than last year. Our problem is that CBO does not agree with OMB. What they said, the receipts from FHA were actually $2.9 billion less than what OMB. So the reality is we're about $1.8 billion in reality below last year because of the receipt number that we have to deal with CBO. even though the allocation technically looks larger, we're actually $1.8 billion less as far as program.
Well, I appreciate you clarifying that for me because
Did that
was
help?
yeah, it did. I was a little confused after conference this morning, and in fact, I had argued with my staff, and now it turns out we're all right.
Yeah.
But thank you for doing the work to get this bill to the floor. It's important that we do this work. I'm encouraged by the fact that we're doing our third appropriations bill before the start of June, and I'm told that's historic. Certainly the first 2 terms I was here, the appropriations work consumed the majority of the summer, and I think that's as it should be. So I thank you for doing your work. I hold out hope that the other body will perform in kind, but at least I know going into whatever discussions we have at the end of the fiscal year, our work will be done, and as a consequence, it will make that process more meaningful. So, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for the recognition, and I'll yield back to you.
Dr. Burgess, thank you very much. It eludes me. I know your staff pretty well that somebody on your staff would argue with you. I can't imagine that being a healthy thing. Well, Mike, I think you ought to come by and visit me. I'll help you out there. Thank you very much. Mr. McGovern.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And let me first of all thank you both for your incredible service here, and I have great respect for you both. I will say, Mr. Pastor, that I'm going to advocate for an open rule, but that's actually a good thing for you because usually what I advocate for, the opposite happens. So you may recall that we had a contentious debate on the Department of Defense authorization bill last week that, this major bill, and we were not allowed to have a vote on Afghanistan, which to this day baffles me. And the President has made his announcement that while we're going to draw down troops, we're going to be there for at least the next couple of years, but he's going to negotiate that with the new President. And as you know as well as I do, anything can happen, and we have no say over that. So that's I think I'm still very disappointed in the way this place operates that we couldn't have done that. But on this, I will agree with you that the funding levels that you've been given are woefully inadequate. And I don't know, it's obviously probably not going to happen this year before the election. And if my Republican friends are still in control in the next session, you need to have a conversation with people in your conference about getting real. Our nation's infrastructure is crumbling all over the place. I've got bridges in Massachusetts that are older than most of your states, and they are in disrepair, and they need to be repaired. Highways, roads. Infrastructure monies are the most sought after monies, I think, in every single state. We're aging as a country, and we need to maintain them. And so, at some point, someone's going to have to figure out a way to pay for this. And we have to get beyond the Tea Party rhetoric and beyond these sequestrations and lousy budgets and saying our hands are tied. We've got to find a way to fund transportation. We need to find a way to make sure that the revenues are there so that we can make sure that we have a healthy infrastructure. Because if we don't, it will continue to hurt our economy. And I've always felt that investments in the types of things that you guys fund are good for the country. They create jobs. They create revenue. It's a win-win-win. And here we are, talking about an allocation that is actually appropriates less money than the FY 2014 THUD bill, despite the higher allocation. It just goes against what everybody in this country really believes we should be investing in. So, but that's not your fault. That's a conversation that my friends are going to have with their conference. I do have one question. I've spent an awful lot of time on this issue of truck size and truck weight. We went. I think it is a mistake to advocate for bigger, heavier, longer trucks. Mini trains. I think they should be put on a track and not on a highway. And we have the Department of Transportation is now undergoing a study that we have all asked for, to look at this issue from every perspective, especially the safety perspective. And I guess I'm trying to understand why are you including a rider in this bill to exempt 3 states from truck weight limits when there has been absolutely no review by highway safety experts or any sort of cost-benefit analysis to conclude that it is safe for these trucks to be on the road. And I'm just trying to figure out how this get into an appropriations bill.
Well, first of all, if I could address maybe some of the things that you mentioned. Our allocation is in line with the bipartisan budget agreement. While I don't like the allocation, it is part of what everybody voted for on a bipartisan basis as far as the 1014 number, how it's divided up. And the Senate, the other body, apparently has some different math. They actually come up, I think, with about $17 billion more to spend under the same agreement as what we do on this side. So it puts us in a difficult position.
But let's just be honest, who's kind of dragging the number down? It wasn't the Democrats in the House, nor quite frankly, I think, over in the Senate. I mean, all I'm simply saying is at some point we all have to have a real discussion about what are the transportation needs and infrastructure needs of this country and how are we going to fund them. And saying that we don't have the money, when you're on your own, it will no longer be an option.
Right. Well, and that's not for our committee.
Right. I hear.
The authorizers are the ones that are supposed to come up with the plan to pay for additional funding. I would be more than happy. I mean, I totally agree with the point you make as far as our infrastructure. And our problem in this bill is basically the housing vouchers are eating up everything else and putting pressure on every other line in this entire bill. We did set the priorities as far as the numbers that are in MAP 21 with subject to reauthorization, fully fund air traffic controllers, and make sure that we don't have anybody lose their house or their housing vouchers. But that is the part that really is eating up everything else. As far as the truck weights, one of the states has a bill that's already passed the House floor. There's another bill waiting for the same consideration on the floor. The third state, since one of them was put in, we decided to put all three of them in together. I'm sure this will be subject for debate going forward. But
I guess my point would be that we've asked, again, the Department of Transportation to do a study. I mean, let's assume the Department of Transportation decides to freeze truck size and truck weight. I mean, trucks are, they go from state to state to state. I think it just seems to me to, waiting a little bit until we get some clarification from the Department of Transportation as to what they think would have been a more logical way to proceed. But.
Well, and that's, I'm not going to make the argument for this or against it, but the fact of the matter is when you talk about trucks going from state to state, there is in the Idaho instance, the truck weights are heavier on both sides of the state, and so they come into Idaho and go on state roads.
But it's again from a safety.
That's what the issue is.
No, and I get it, but from a safety perspective, I mean, I've spent a lot of time with law enforcement, with with people, with heads of highway departments to talk about the wear and tear on the roads and the costs and all that. I mean, you go on this slippery slope where you start, all of a sudden, oh well, this state did it, I got to do it, and then you end up basically deciding the policy that way versus on whether it's the right thing to do or the wrong thing. But I I get the argument. I just don't think it should be in this bill. And am I correct that there are no funds at all included in this bill for high-speed rail?
That's correct.
And is there a reason for that, or just because there's no more money, or we don't?
It goes to our allocation and to the amount of money. There's quite honestly, the definition of high-speed rail has changed to now high-performance rail. There's not even really a true definition anymore of what it is, and that's one problem. But there's simply the allocation is a major problem.
Again, I'm a big fan of trains, and I think that, I mean, if I were president, I'm a McGovern who wouldn't even win Massachusetts in a presidential election, but I wish there were like an Apollo project in this country, so that in 10 years we'd have the finest railway system in the entire world. I mean, I think it would be. It'd do a lot to deal with these issues of, climate change. It would do a lot to relieve congestion on the roads and wear and tear and safety issues. I mean, but anyway, I get it. But I appreciate your work, and a lot of the things that I'm complaining about have nothing to do with you. It's just, Mr. Pastor?
Governor, that's my argument to you that with the Senate allocation, that I believe that there's a high probability that some of these programs, especially with the pressure
Is the green light?
And if I or just pull closer to yourself.
You have to
perhaps.
swallow it.
Yeah, it's pretty close to that.
That is my argument, that moving this bill forward gives it an opportunity, at least a chance, in conference with the Senate to restore some of the monies in some of these programs that you and I think most of the members feel are very important in infrastructure, whether it be Amtrak or whether it be airports, whether it be just bridges, etc. And so that's why I made the request that we might consider a structured rule, whatever rule is appropriate, so that this bill has a chance to go out of the House and have a conference, because hopefully, being optimist as I am, that there would be a chance to help some of these programs that I think everybody here believes that are needed and should be properly funded.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. You back.
Thank the gentleman for his questions, and I join with the gentleman, Mr. McGovern, in his recognition of the work that you have done together, the way that you see these issues, and the difficult circumstance that you've been put in to have to produce a product. I think you've done a good job, and I think the gentleman gives you credit for that also. Gentleman, Mr. Woodall is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I have many thanks.
Quick afternoon for you there. Gentleman from Colorado is recognized. Gentleman does not seek recognition. Gentleman from Florida is recognized. Gentleman has no question. Gentleman from Orlando, Florida is recognized. Gentleman has no questions. Dr. Burgess, do you wish to consume any more time? I want to thank both of you for being here, this opportunity to be before you and to watch you perform on the floor as you try and have this important act of funding our highways and our systems, and housing is most important. I appreciate you being here and look forward to the time you'll spend on the floor with the knowledge that you too will get a chance, hopefully, to have an open rule, but that will be done most effectively. And I thank both of you. You're now excused. Thank you very much. I want to announce before we go to our Intelligence Committee that we've been joined by Emily Ford and her father, Randy Ford, who's the president of National Right, your congressman. Mr. Ford, we had spoken earlier about how in the meeting, you and I earlier today, you gave me this Gold Mouse Award. And on behalf of the entire Rules Committee, we wanted to thank you for recognizing that we're trying to do a better job with having transparency, information that's available, not just going back, but also forward. And we appreciate you taking time to be here. I also recognize a good number of college interns that are from my office that have joined us today, and we're delighted that each of you are here also. We now move to H.R. 4681, Intelligence Authorization Act for fiscal years 2014 and 2015. I would hope that the gentleman would clearly delineate what that meaning of that. I think I get it, but I'd like to hear it from you. Gentlemen, you were not in the room at the time that we started the original hearing. Mrs. Slaughter, our ranking member, is not with us today. She is still, as you know, with the family in recovery over her husband's passing away last week. And we want to remember her and her family, her service, not just to her district, but also to this committee. And so Mr. McGovern is ably filling in during that role today. And so I'm delighted that both of you are here. As you know, we count on each of you providing the best information as you can, representing not only your party, your beliefs, your district, but more importantly, the tremendously important avenues of keeping this Congress up to date on intelligence issues and ideas, holding in check and through proper oversight the intelligence agencies. And I want to thank both of you for your great service. Mr. Chairman Rogers, you've announced you're going to go get your own Gold Mike Award. I've got a Gold Mouse Award. You'll have a Gold Mike Award. But, Mike, we want to thank you for your service to the United States Congress, your friendship that you've provided not only to me, but I know members of this committee. And I know many times that Dutch has done nothing but sung your praises, and I know you vice versa about your work and ability. I'm delighted that you're here today. Without objection, anything you have in writing will be entered in the record. And the gentleman from Michigan, Chairman Rogers, is recognized.
Well, thank you. Our thoughts and prayers go out to Mrs. Slaughter and her family as well. So we understand the difficult time she's going through, and we certainly do appreciate her service and respect her time away. Important. Mr. Chairman, the Intelligence Authorization Act is an annual blueprint for the work of the intelligence community in America's military intelligence efforts. The bill sets the priorities for our critical intelligence efforts and the legal framework to provide guidance and oversight to the exercise of those efforts. Since the ranking member and I have held the leadership positions on the Intelligence Committee, we passed 3 intelligence authorization bills in a bipartisan fashion and hope to continue on that trend with H.R. 4681. Passing a yearly intelligence authorization bill is the primary method by which Congress exerts its oversight authority over the intelligence community, and that's why we believe these are so important. It allows us to yearly, daily, monthly keep tabs on all of the operations and impact those operations in a way that's meaningful to the oversight of these organizations, all 16 of them. And so why we put, and I'll submit the rest of my statement for the record, Mr. Chairman, as you indicated, to keep this moving quickly, we put both 2014 and 2015 in the same bill for the reason that last year the 2014 bill was snagged up a little bit. We have since freed it up, so there are just 5 months left in this year's, less than that, in this year's 2014 authorization. In order to make sure that in working with the Senate that we get a 2014 bill, we would need to move the 2014 bill here, and they would move it there, and then we'd have a product that we could actually conference right away. So that's why we put the 2014 and the 2015 in the same product. And the 2014 bill was pre-conferenced with the Senate, so it's not only bipartisan, it is bicameral. And we felt that was important. And the 2015 bill was, we've worked out most of the details with the Senate as well. And again, these are really very important blueprints forward. We had some highlights of investing in technology to keep up with our adversaries that are interested in domination of space and cyber and other places. We think we've made important investments in these bills to try to meet those demands. We have also found a lot of savings. I think between the ranking member and I think we're up to about $5 billion in the 4 years that we've both been in leadership positions here that we've been able to save and eke out of the intelligence community by merging training, merging IT, trying to find efficiencies to save money. So we're prioritizing the money that we do have on issues we think meet the demands and needs of a secure America, and at the same time we're being good stewards of those taxpayer dollars. So with that, I'll turn it over to my ranking member, and if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, would submit my full statement for the record.
Without objection, that will be accepted, and I appreciate the help with that very much. The gentleman from Maryland, my dear friend, is recognized.
First thing I do want to acknowledge the Chairman's leadership throughout the years. Mike and I made a commitment when we came from leadership that we could not continue the way the committee was running without passing bills. Because if we don't pass our bill, then we don't have oversight. And I think one of the most important functions of the Intelligence Committee is oversight of all the intelligence agencies. We We cannot give them a blank check. We have to make sure they're doing what they're supposed to do pursuant to the law and making sure we hold them accountable. This bill sets out priorities in our intelligence community and allocates resources to critical national security programs, including those that detect, prevent, and disrupt potential terrorist attacks. The chairman talked about, from a fiscal point of view, we were able to cut the budgets in our 4 years by 20%, but yet not affecting mission at all. And what we did, we went to all the agencies and made sure that they work with us so that we could find a way, especially doing all the sequestration issues and everything else, to make sure it would not affect mission. And I think basically that's what this bill does. So I can submit my statement for the record also, and any questions we have to answer.
Thank you very much.
And the chairman, I'm still negotiating with him on child support and custody once he leaves, but that still hasn't been resolved. We'll see where we are.
Well, I noticed a few years ago your arm was in a sling. I don't know whether he broke your arm or your shoulder.
Well, I just had a new knee 3 months ago, and next fuse, back fuse. See, when I'm 90, I'll be walking strong, and you'll be bent over.
Well, I doubt I'll be around. You know, it's sometimes in this place better to be seen than viewed, so we're aware of that. Mr. Rogers, the American people are concerned about safety of this country, our homeland security, and they're concerned about whether their own personal private data is secure. And both of you, because I've had discussions with you, have had many of these circumstances that have been thrust at you. I remember years ago when we had the shootings here in Washington, D.C. We couldn't find the sniper. Technology found the sniper. The ability to look back at personal data and records found the sniper. That certainly was in the best interest of public safety. It certainly was in the best interest of common sense. And yet somehow there's this perception that I really worry about myself, not my own personal data, but really I would assume that all of us should be concerned about living in a free society, that if you're not doing anything wrong, you have nothing to fear. And I still openly will, back home in Dallas, Texas, have that philosophy. Help me out with both your perspectives about you're on the inside, you're aware of the needs, you see many of the problems, you certainly hear the stories and know the outcome, and yet you do what you do carefully, cautiously, quietly. And yet I, while not being on the inside of that, my father used to be director of the FBI. I have some insight into things. I count on him to help provide me with some way to look at things. How do you best say to the American people, we're spending money that's correct, the policies are defendable, there's a balance between them? I'm not trying to lead either of you as a witness. I'm trying to allow you a chance, if you got the question, how do you answer that? Mr. Ruppersberger?
Okay, first thing, I think you raised some very important issues. We have to seek the issue of balance.
Sir, if we could have you, I apologize, we could have you hold on just a second. We're having trouble hearing you.
Oh, you do? Okay.
And so if I could have you pull that that microphone.
Got it. Okay, can you hear now?
Is it on?
It's on.
Okay.
Okay, got it.
Gentleman's recognized.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
I think some of the things that you just said, first thing, you have to seek the balance. There's no question it's a very dangerous world out there. We have people plotting throughout the world who want to organize to attack us and our allies. And intelligence is the best defense against terrorism. We have Russia-China threats. You have issues just with Target, those type of threats. We have issues that a lot of people don't know about in the intel world and would cost a lot of money are the satellite programs that we have, where China and Russia and all of these groups have that. But what happened when Snowden came out, and we had just passed our CISPA bill to hopefully allow the business community and government to communicate because people don't realize 80% of the network is controlled by the private sector. And then when the Snowden came out, there was a perception by the public that the government was listening to your information without court order. And you know, if I weren't in the business, I might think the same thing. And so Mike and I decided that even though there were no violations of the law on the bulk data collection, that the perception, and you mentioned the issue of perception, was the major issue. And if you want to get the public confidence, we had to do something differently. We spent 1 year in attempting to change the law, which we did. We brought in the ACLU. We brought in all different factions that we could in order to find a way to better protect us, but yet give the confidence of the people that NSA was following the law. Because, you know, the debate, sometimes people maybe might think, well, the privacy groups, they're overreaching. I don't think so. I think the privacy groups are keeping the debate alive. And that's what we're about here in the United States, to debate it, to put it out front. And I really think what happened last week, even though this bill has nothing to do with that, this is more of a funding bill. What happened last week when we were able to get the judiciary and the intelligence community together to pass this law, this FISA law, which says the government no longer will have bulk collection, and that there will be the court involved in every single case when it involves the United States of America or an American citizen. So, you know, now it's a matter of us getting the message out, what we're doing, how we've reacted to what the public is. There's no question. The people who, NSA is in my district, the people who work at NSA, they get up every morning and they feel very good about helping our country and saving lives. And as a result of the Snowden leaks, which if you look at each one in the end, there's an answer to each one of them. That caused a lot of morale problems and neighbors teasing them and that type of thing. The NSA are as good as any, just as effective as our military, and they work closely with that. So I think right now, as a result of what happened last week, as a result of the debate, of having the left, the right, the middle coming together, I think that was very important. I hope that we can now move on to protect our country, yet all citizens in this country will understand that freedom, liberty, constitutional rights are also very important in this country. We have more oversight in this country, as far as this is concerned, than any other country in the world right now.
Thank you very much. Chairman Rogers?
Yeah, and I think there's a misunderstanding about oversight, and we hear it a lot, that there isn't any oversight. That just couldn't be further from the truth. And so when, again, we took over the committee 4 years ago, we instituted regular oversight on every program that people are even concerned about publicly. There was some mishmash of that before, but we put into regular order not only weekly staff updates, but member updates by month by program. So covert action, we do something called a quarterly review. Covert action is the most sensitive things that the United States government would participate in. And we do quarterly reviews, official quarterly reviews, where they have to come in and they go through every single program with us. We go from stem to stern. And then we do continually monitoring of those programs throughout the year. There is a robust debate behind closed doors. And so the problem is people have translated that transparency means it has to be on the front page of your local newspaper. That in fact, is not transparency. That's leaks. And there's a huge difference, and it damages our ability to continue to keep America safe by collecting the information that they need. So even the programs of which were so controversial, and I agree with Dutch, that we believe that we came together in a responsible way to meet what was the perception problem on these programs. All of the reviews, none of them found illegal activity in the bulk data collection. It was overseen, and by the way, I was for it when it was classified. I'm still for it today because there were so many oversight regimens built into the system, of which, by the way, we, as a committee, monitored on an ongoing basis. So all of that is happening all the time. And again, these bills are important because it allows us to continue to do those kinds of activities. Without Intel auth bills, you lose that ability to make sure that they show up and provide the information that they need to provide. So, you know, we think people can sleep well at night knowing that there's robust debate behind that closed door, knowing that there is transparency between Congress and the intelligence agencies. They do fully cooperate. I'm trying to think of an instant where they didn't give us something that A, we needed, or B, we asked for. I can't think of one off the top of my head. And some of them have been troublesome, some of them not. And we've worked through all of those issues at the committee. You have some very responsible people down there. They understand that there's only 21 of us down there that are cleared at this level to deal with this information. It's a huge responsibility of which we take very, very seriously, and we all spend a tremendous amount of time in that committee trying to get it right. So, again, last week I think you saw, as Dutch again said, that we dealt with the one biggest problem was it wasn't the fact that the program was illegal bulk collection. It was that people had a discomfort that there could be abuse. They didn't find abuse. They didn't find a rogue agency. They found no domestic surveillance. They were not listening to cell phones of Americans willy-nilly. They're not reading people's emails across the country. None of that was found. And again, I think we found the responsible way so that we could continue to monitor if a terrorist from Yemen calls into the United States to activate a plot like they did on 9/11, and we missed it. And our argument was we need to keep some operational capability to do that and protect people's privacy. We think we found that. I think Americans, that's why we saw such a different political, philosophical view come together on the confidence-building bill that passed last week. So I do think you can go home and tell people, yes, people are on it. Yes, we're paying attention to it. Yes, there is oversight. And by the way, we just added a whole new way to address Americans' concern that they thought that there might be abuse with the NSA lockboxing that information over with the government. And I think it was a common-sense approach to this thing that now allows us to work on these issues that are incredibly important for the country. This lays out policy objectives for these intelligence agencies for the remainder of this year and into next year.
One of the things that our committee, that we see the threats every day, most of them are classified, and sometimes you wish you could tell people more to let them know what the threat is, because the threat is there. An example, look at the two unsophisticated brothers in Boston and how serious that was. And they were very unsophisticated. There are a lot of sophisticated cases and incidents and organizations that are out there.
The intelligence community finds itself on the side of being whipped a lot. I don't think people so much second guess them. They just don't have always confidence in what they're doing. And I just want to say this to both of you. I think that both of you working together, and whether there's a new chairman next year or a new ranking member next year, I don't know who will be there. Working together gives this House confidence in me also, to where I think I tend not to want to second guess. I ask a lot of questions, but I've found that both of you, and I go through Chairman Rogers, and some of the members have been most open to try and make sure that they cleared questions, and not just the smell test, but the real honesty came through. And I think it's important that we have confidence in the people who have the job, first line of defense, finding something before it happens. Intelligence. An army without an intelligence is a bad army. A country without good intelligence is in trouble. So I thank both of you. Chairman Cole.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't have a lot of questions. Obviously, there's a lot of things we can't talk about here, but I do want to make a couple of quick observations, if I may. First, this is probably the last time, Chairman Rogers, you'll be up here, and I can't tell you how much I will miss you in Congress and how much I will miss your leadership in this critical role. Your background in the military as an FBI agent and just the way you've handled yourself at what's a dangerous time in our country's history, I think really not only does you great credit, but does this institution great credit, and actually does the Speaker great credit, because he made the decision to put you in this spot, and I think it was probably one of the very best decisions he's made. I can't tell you how pleased I am with the manner in which you've operated, and part of that is the manner in which you and your ranking member, Mr. Ruppersberger, have worked together. I think you guys have been a model. I think I never have any problem with the debate that we have up here. There's a natural tension between liberty and security, and I don't think we should ever think that sacrificing liberty for security is the right thing to do, nor should we surrender security, in the name of liberty. I do believe we can have both. There's a tension there. I don't mind the debates we have on this. I actually have respect my colleagues no matter where they come down along the spectrum, because the debate is part of what keeps us free. But to be free, you also have to be secure. And we've seen that time again around the world. And we have had some terrific mistakes in intelligence, not on your watch particularly, but WMDs was an intelligence mistake that has haunted us for a decade. Things like Snowden was an intelligence mistake. The nature of what you guys do is very tough. I didn't notice a lot of people other than Ronald Reagan predicting the fall of the Soviet Union either. I don't think the intelligence people got that right. So we're going to have intelligence failures. It's almost the nature of the business itself. Very inexact, very difficult. But we do have technical capabilities now that we've never had before. They're the things that both keep us secure, but other Americans worry about if they were turned against us or used inappropriately. I'm particularly pleased that you made the remark about the NSA. I appreciate the President's panel that discussing. I actually went to a brief on that, and them making the point. We don't have a rogue agency here. We do have some things that concern us. We've got full cooperation. People want to work with us. Those are things that the American people need to hear. They need to know that the instruments of government that you both are in part responsible for supervising in a very unusual level and in a way that is far beyond what the average member can or should have access to. You have that confidence, in your job. So I want to thank both of you. I cannot tell you how much. Actually, I think a year or two ago, I actually wrote you, Chairman Rogers, a note about that. I felt better as an American knowing the two of you were in your respective spots and the relationship you have with one another. I was very comfortable that the right questions were being asked in the appropriate venues, that people were being held to account, but also that we understood the difference between the good guys and the bad guys. And the good guys are the guys that work for us, the guys that you deal with on a regular basis professionally, that dedicated their lives to protecting this country and to trying to anticipate threats. And the fact that we haven't had another 9/11 is proof positive of how well that has been done, in my view, because we all know plenty of people in the world that are not the good guys have tried to do that. And I think one of the reasons they haven't succeeded is the work that the two of you have done and your colleagues on your committee representing all of us as an institution in a bipartisan way. So again, thank you very much for what I think is exceptional public service that each of you have rendered to the conference or to the Congress, and that each of you have rendered much more profoundly to the American people. It's one of those things that maybe isn't too glamorous, doesn't get maybe quite the recognition it should get, but you two have overseen the operations that keep us free and keep us safe, and you've done it in a way that's protected our liberty and not compromised it. And I just want to say for the record how proud I am and how much, Mr. Chairman, we will miss you. And, Ranking Member, we're glad you're hanging around, and we hope we can give you an appropriate partner to work with going forward. It would be very difficult for us to find someone as good as Chairman Rogers to work with you. But with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr.
Tom, I'd like to associate my comments with the gentleman from Oklahoma who has, I think, put it pretty well about the confidence that we have in both of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that.
Does anyone seek recognition? Gentleman's recognition.
I just want to thank you both for coming here, Mr. Rogers. I want to wish you well, and I've always appreciated your kind of sense of civility as you've debated issues here in Congress. I hope you don't lose that civility when you go on the radio. But I just want to say something. I mean, I have great respect for the people who serve in our intelligence agencies, and but I will tell you that. What is troubling to me and to a lot of my constituents is that a lot of the issues that we're debating and a lot of the bills that we're passing to try to reel things in, we wouldn't even be talking about if it weren't for the leaks, and that I find troubling. I don't like doing policy by leaks. I think that's but I will be honest with you that. A lot of what I've learned over the last few years from the leaks, it kind of went far beyond anything I thought was going on. And I don't know whether that's maybe you all knew it, and that was, and that's all that mattered. But I mean, I think for those of us, who were asked to vote on these various bills, I mean, I had no clue about kind of what I think has been the overreach. I'm not saying it's illegal. I mean, we do authorizations here that you can, drive a bus through. They're worded in ways that you can stretch them to the ultimate limits. And but it's that the extent of some of the surveillance was so much that I mean, some of the stuff that we were doing, with regard to our closest allies, I just don't, I think members of Congress who are not on the Intelligence Committee, and I've been to lots of classified briefings, and, I will be honest with you, most of the time I don't find them particularly helpful. I have to tell you that it does bother me that, I mean, this whole debate that we're having here would not have happened if it weren't for people who, and I'm not here to defend Edward Snowden, but I mean, a lot of what we're doing is in reaction to what we learned from him. And I just don't think that's the way we should be doing kind of intelligence policy around here. And, and a lot of my constituents always ask, who's watching the watches? And, well, what else don't we know? I mean, and even the way, and again, what was interesting, I watched that interview last night. One of the things that I found interesting is even the way Mr. Snowden was characterized up till last night as a kind of an inconsequential, low-level, out-of-the-loop contractor, when we find out that, maybe he wasn't so out of the loop, that he had he had been involved in other things as well, that again, I for the life of me, I don't know why kind of his resume wasn't better clarified to us. I mean, what I learned last night, I didn't know from any of the briefings that I had been to before. So it's just kind of I'm just venting here a little bit, simply saying that I'm just troubled by the fact that a lot of what we're doing right now is in reaction to things that have been leaked, and if they weren't leaked, we wouldn't be talking about any of this stuff, and we wouldn't be trying to reel in the NSA or put limits on domestic and international surveillance. We wouldn't. None of this stuff would be talking about. So it just has bothered me a great deal. That's not a reflection of the work that you're doing. It's just that it's I wish we could have gotten to this point in a different way. So anyway, but
no, and I appreciate that. But you do. I think it's so important to understand we do have these debates, and yet, although by the time we get up here, we have worked out so many of our issues and problems. I hope people don't think that we close the door and it's nothing but high fives and group hugs and nobody asks any hard questions. That's not what happens now. It is a very robust. Now, the vast majority of the people, when we went through this, and again, no outside group found any problem. So what we were basically dealing with, and by the way, it really isn't related to this. It's related to the FISA bill.
Right. No.
And there were debates. There were debates even then about the issue. I just think it's unfortunate. And let me give you a great example. So even last night you talked about his resume. He describes himself as an intelligence officer. He was never an intelligence officer. So be careful about taking his word for it. The other one, I'll give you another one. It just came out today, where he said, well, I emailed them. I communicated to them my displeasure. Well, we released the emails today, and it clearly shows that he misrepresented himself again. And I would be really cautious about saying that this guy anyway.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to buy into his line, but I don't think the way he was described to us is necessarily accurate either. Right. No, but also, I mean, maybe, or maybe he is an inconsequential, out of the loop, contractor. Maybe that still stands. But all I'm simply saying is that so much of what we're talking about here today is as a result in response to what has been leaked. And I get that you may be having debates behind closed doors, but we are asked to vote on authorization bills and on appropriations bills. And I got to be honest with you. I mean, when my constituents ask me, did you have any clue You know, and I try to go to every one of these briefings. And this is not you, but I go back to the Patriot Act. I remember asking questions during the briefing about whether some of the things that have happened could have ever happened. It was told, no, there's no way. And then they did happen. So the author of the Patriot Act was even surprised by the overreach. So all I'm simply saying is, on some of these bills, I mean, I don't think that a lot of us here were as informed as we should have been about the extent to some of these programs. I understand the need for making sure the classified information doesn't get out and making sure that you don't do anything that disrupts intelligence. But I mean, I gotta be honest with you. I think that's where most of the American people are a little bit kind of puzzled, is that all this comes out and everybody's kind of surprised. And I don't think that's the way it should work in this country.
And I just, if I may, just offer a word of caution. So, when it was described as a domestic surveillance program, it was never a domestic surveillance program. When it's fostered as they're listening to your phone calls, Americans, they are not listening to your phone calls, Americans. Not without a warrant, they're not. Yeah. And so,
but they were gathering.
Part of the problem we ran into is that we were getting deluged with things that simply weren't true, nor were they happening. And so we were trying to have the thoughtful debate of, listen, we have this operational need. We filled it with this way, of which was overseen not only in multiple agencies in the executive branch, which is why, by the way, I think the President and I disagree on a lot of things, continued the program because it did have all those layers. I don't think the President would have willy-nilly said, hey, well, it's not overseen, but let's do it anyway. I really don't think the President would have done that. And he didn't do that. And then we, as members of Congress on the appropriate committee, also had the ability to oversee it. And so even last night, you said his resume was different.
But last week, the House passed a bill that you just talked about, that addressed a lot of the concerns that had been raised. I didn't think it went far enough. I didn't vote for it, but it passed. But we would not have had that bill up if it weren't for, the controversy that came after these leaks. And all I'm simply saying is that there's something kind of wrong with that picture, it troubles me, and I know it troubles a lot of my constituents. And I don't know what the answer is, but I think that at a very minimum we need to figure out there needs to be a better way to kind of keep people informed who are not on the committee about what's going on, the extent of some of this stuff, and there's no easy answer to that. But it just, I don't think we should have to rely on finding out information that well, I guess what I'm simply saying is that we wouldn't be having this would be a very quick hearing, and it would be in and out. Save for the leaks that have come out that have caused a great deal of discussion in this country, and I just think we got to figure out a better way to do this. Anyway. But I appreciate.
It's a very dangerous field, and I think there's always a need to go positive. It's not about who Snowden is, it's about what he did.
Yeah, but it's not just Snowden. I mean, we focus because he was on the TV last night, but it's there are others besides Snowden who have.
The important thing about it is we have to debate.
Yeah.
Will the gentleman yield for a moment?
I yield to the gentleman.
Thank you, and I concur entirely with what the gentleman from Massachusetts said in this, especially in this regard. The reason that so many Americans, myself included, have conflicted feelings about somebody who violated our public trust and at the same time we're grateful for some of the revelations because we're able to act on them is because I, as a representative of my district, was unable to engage in the type of oversight that I should have because I did not know about the prison program before the Snowden revelations. And I've said publicly that, again, while, again, he violated the law and should be punished, I am grateful that he has given me the information I need to be able to engage in proper oversight, work that I feel is not yet complete. So I strongly support my colleague from Massachusetts' challenge, I think, to both of you to maybe come up with a better way that the rest of us who aren't on the committee are able to engage in oversight on behalf of our constituents, because we should not rely on lawbreakers and traders to do our job. Something must be wrong. Happy to yield back.
Anyway, I have nothing else to say.
It's not that we had sunset on this bill to begin with, so we were reevaluating and looking at this issue. Also, what makes this committee so good now is that we have far left, we have far right, and we respect each other's judgment. I think what's wrong with this Congress we have right now is if you disagree with somebody, they're the enemy. That's not the way it should be. And I think Jan, who is here, who's going to talk about something that she feels very strongly about, is puts her position out there, and she's glad we debate it and listen to it. And that's what's important. And then we come to the conclusion on what we vote and we think is best for the country. And the more that more transparent we can be, the better it's going to be too. I agree with you. But there are sources and methods, and we cannot give the enemy. It's very dangerous out there, the China-Russia threat, the terrorism threat, and, just what happened in Boston. Where was Intel? Why did we fail? Why did things like this happen? So you've got to have that balance. I think the bill last week gives us a lot of that balance.
Yeah, and just to clarify, I didn't say what I said as a partisan,
No, I didn't mean
comment. It's just something that troubles me. I just felt I had to say it. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back his time. Gentleman from Utah, do you seek recognition?
Yes.
Gentleman's recognized.
Mr. Ruppersberger.
You don't have to seek recognition.
Well, no, I was told as I entered that I had to ask you a question.
Uh-oh.
So, Mr. Ruppersberger, when are you going to give your staff a salary increase?
Well, when you guys deal with the issue of sequestration, we can talk about that. Are you talking about my Utah staff?
Maybe.
My person from Utah?
Maybe.
Whose husband used to be a Republican chief of staff?
Maybe.
Okay. And she has Utah on the back of her car,
Maybe you
license
should,
plate?
you should listen to her husband.
That's good intel.
Well, he's out making money, I hope, for her and her kids.
I'm neither confirming or denying that. I'll yield back.
Gentleman yields back his time. The gentleman from Florida.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And first of all, I want to thank both of you for your leadership. And Chairman Rogers, I hate to see you go as a fellow law enforcement officer. Absolutely hate to see you go. And I will associate myself with some comments that gentleman from Massachusetts said. I think what happened with the Snowden thing, it just caught us flat-footed. And anytime as sheriff, or when you get caught flat-footed, you're unsure of what the heck's going on with the Snowden revelation as it related to the metadata collection. I just think it caught most members flat-footed. And I guess, that was my frustration as to, man, because people ask, did you know about it? And you go, didn't know a thing about that. And I think that's probably where Mr. McGovern's trying to go is how do we help ourselves next time so we don't get flat-footed, because we don't want to be opposite where we need to be in regards to security of this nation. Listen, Snowden in his revelations, the guy deserves to be in prison for the rest of his life, because it's not just what while it may have given us some angst in regards to not knowing about metadata collection, but it's all the other things that he had access to that is troubling to me, sitting on Armed Services Committee. And so when people are trying to make him out to being some kind of a helpful person, he's just the opposite. The guy is the biggest traitor I've ever read about. But that being said, so I go back to Mr. McGovern, is the fact and for myself, I just felt real flat-footed, caught by surprise, have no idea what's going on, and that's never a good position for us to be in, particularly since we're the ones sitting up here. I didn't help craft Patriot Act, but obviously even the author of it was kind of taken aback. And that's every time, we pass a piece of legislation, it can be not misconstrued, and I'm not going to say that it was misconstrued, but it can be utilized in a way that maybe we just didn't see it being utilized. And I would hope that as this moves forward, that somehow, in a classified or unclassified way, that we could be kept in the loop in a better way, so we're not caught like that. And you guys got a tough job. my wife will ask me, well, what happened in this meeting? Well, it's classified. I can't tell you, or I'd have to kill you, and we don't want to do that. So, but this world is not safer. Even though some people would let us believe that everything's okay, we're not safer. And there are so many threats out there from non-state actors, but also state actors. And I don't think we should ever take our eye off that ball. And it's not just the metadata collection or signals collection, but it's that human intelligence collection that we need so much of. And I think that's an area we've got to improve upon, too. So with that, I really have no questions. I just want to thank you for your service. And thank you so much. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Some gentleman from Orlando, Florida. Gentleman does not seek recognition. Thank you very much. I want to thank you once again. I think all the members of the committee have offered you gratuitous feedback indicating our not only sincere appreciation for your service, dedication, professionalism, but also for that which you represent. That is freedom and liberty on behalf of the American people. Chairman Rogers, best of luck.
Thank you, and I appreciate all of the kind words. Made me a little nervous. I thought I was at a wake, and since you were talking about me, I thought that did not portend for my immediate future. But thank you very, very much for your kind words and your compliments and the support of what both of us are trying to accomplish on behalf of the Congress and for the American people to find that right balance. We think we have, but we're also willing to take constructive criticism along the way.
And we understand your concerns and your concerns too, and we just have to work through those issues, do the best oversight that we can, and hopefully we have the right team that is there. The Intelligence Committee was created to do the oversight and to make sure that we wouldn't have leaks that we had in the future. So thank you for having us here today.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. This panel is now excused. The gentleman from Utah will now come and sit in my stead as chairman. Gentleman's Utah's recognized.
Let me ask, if we can, for the second panel to come up here. Mr. Pitts, Ms. Schakowsky, Mr. Schiff, with or without your phone, if you would actually come and join us at the table. All right, we appreciate you joining us here. We'll start with Mr. Pitts, if you'd like to talk about the amendments that you have before us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, this is amendment number 20. It's a bipartisan amendment co-sponsored by Barbara Lee, Ted Yoho, Janice Schakowsky, Frank Wolf, and Jim McGovern. And basically, again, this is about seeking more transparency in the new field of drone warfare. And I'm not here as a critic of drone strikes, as someone who flew 116 combat missions in Vietnam in B-52s. I'm thankful that our airmen are less exposed to harm because of the technology. But I have some concerns, and since I already spoke on most of the issue last week, let me just make a few brief remarks to clarify some concerns. The first topic I'd like to address is how Congress does indeed have the power and authority to require the administration to take the actions outlined in my amendment. I understand that the President retains inherent powers and executive privilege in some areas, but do not see this as conflicting with those powers. And I'd like to first point to the FY14 NDAA, specifically sections 1041 to 1043. Here, Congress mandated briefings and even a report by the Secretary of Defense on several related issues, including lethal operations outside a theater of major hostilities and legal and policy considerations in determining individuals could be the objects of targeted lethal operations. And I believe my amendment follows the philosophy of what the House Armed Services Committee did last year. Secondly, I've heard that there are concerns about the reporting mechanism, specifically Congress's ability to ask information in a classified form. I think we can dispense with this concern rather easily because Congress passed legislation and the President signed into law bills that include the same language in regards to classified reports with unclassified summaries. The Countering Iran in Western Hemisphere Act of 2012 is one example. Thirdly, I understand that there are concerns surrounding jurisdictions of committees, and I changed my amendment from the one I offered last week to address this issue. I understand that House Armed Services and the Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence retains separate and exclusive information from the administration. My amendment attempts to keep this separate and exclusive reporting and notification by explicitly directing the reporting to the committees on armed services and the Congressional Intelligence Committees. It asks for reporting to be done in classified form, as is the case now when the administration notifies the committees on these subjects. And I understand that the committees already receive most, if not all, of this information, but it is important that the American people know specifically that Congress is being notified specifically in what my amendment asks for in clear and a comprehensive manner, transparency, more transparency. Lastly, I'd like to discuss why my amendment is good public policy. There's an obvious tension over transparency as it relates to targeted lethal force. I understand the Intelligence Committee's positions on this. However, I think the only appropriate forum to have this address is through debate by the entire Congress. Last week, Barbara Lee testified on issues relating to the AUMF, and although I disagreed with her amendment, she brought up some interesting and profound points. The theater and nature of our war on terror is changing. More and more of our focus is on groups affiliated with al-Qaeda. Furthermore, we find ourselves fighting on ground beyond that of Afghanistan and Iraq, much of which is being done through the use of remotely piloted aircraft. We know that sometimes our military and intelligence services find themselves in the unfortunate circumstance of having a high-level target in their sights, but with a real risk of collateral damage. This happens in war, and I know this all too well. But we did not declare war on Pakistan or Yemen, and the world and the American public need to understand that we have internal procedures for navigating these issues. Terrorist groups are already using propaganda relating to drone strikes against us. The idea that we would be giving information that could be used against us is a moot point. It's already occurring. We don't have to reach too far into the past, dwelling on Vladimir Putin's tactics against his people in Chechnya, to look into the future and understand how these new technologies and capabilities might be abused. We need transparency to protect America's legitimacy and to help craft international norms. Our military is calling for greater transparency, as noted in last week's Wall Street Journal. The American people, I believe, are entitled to it, or at least a debate in Congress. And I ask that you consider allowing this debate to take place on the House floor. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'll be happy to answer questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you. And also, anything you have written you'd like to add to that can be added to the record. If you have anything written you would like to add to that, it will be added to the record as well. So let's turn to Ms. Schakowsky. You're one of the ranking member on one of the subcommittees on E&C.
I am on the Oversight Committee. I'm the ranking.
So again, if you have anything in writing you'd like to have added, that's part of the record. We'll recognize you for
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
your amendment.
Let me just first add my support to Mr. Pitt's amendment. I'm proud to be a co-sponsor because transparency in this program, we call it the drone program, is very important. My amendment goes even further, and I'm hoping, though it did not pass in the Intelligence Committee, that it's important enough, though controversial, that it be debated on the floor of the House. What my amendment would do would prohibit elements of the intelligence community from engaging in so-called signature strikes. Those are lethal strikes in which the target is not specifically identified, but whose, quote, pattern of life, unquote, fits the profile or signature of a terrorist. In these situations, we don't know the identity of the target. Instead, we draw conclusions from surveillance about whether someone is affiliated with a terrorist organization or engaged in terrorist conduct. The stakes are high, and it is inevitable that mistakes will be made. Reports from human rights organizations in past years indicate that we've already made several grave errors, and innocent lives have been lost as a result. We need to recognize that each mistake we make in these situations spawns more numerous and more determined adversaries, undermining our mission there in the first place. How we are perceived abroad matters, and even if some of the strikes reported as mistakes are not mistaken, the fact is that the rest of the world, or much of the world, many people in the world, perceive our activities as killing innocent civilians and that we paint all adult male Muslims in these regions as our enemies. Now, I understand the targeted use of lethal action as a last resort to defend American people from harm. I get it. And I also understand that there are going to be some people who hate us regardless of the facts. However, I simply can't support these so-called signature strikes, strikes that can't reliably distinguish between combatants trying to harm us and innocents minding their own business. I do want to point out, however, that there are exceptions to this. First of all, in the case of self-defense or the defense of others against an immediate threat, that would be an exception. 2, actions taken under the authority of any provision of Title 18 United States Code, or 3, in Afghanistan, because we are engaged in combat operations in Afghanistan. So that would be an exception. But these drone strikes take place in countries that we are not officially engaged in war with. So I can't support a tactic that assumes we can simply kill our way to victory. By trying to do so, we are making our security more elusive and hurting our perception around the world. And so I would really implore this committee, because there has been so much discussion about the drone program, about these lethal actions, that we allow for an open debate on the floor of the House. So I am hoping that this amendment will be made in order, and I will yield back.
Thank you. Mr. Schiff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. The amendment that I'm offering today is similar to bipartisan legislation I've introduced with Representative Walter Jones. It's very simple, and it would only require that the Director of the National Intelligence, DNI, prepare and make public an annual report on the number of combatant and civilian casualties caused by the use of drones outside of Afghanistan. The report would also include a definition of the terms combatant and civilian relied upon to prepare the report, and would require that the report be retroactive to 2008 to provide context. So bottom line, very simple amendment, only requires an annual reporting on how many combatants and non-combatants are killed. So as you can gather, it doesn't give information about where strikes occurred or methods or who's carrying them out or anything like that, but it does provide a certain baseline of accountability to ourselves and to the rest of the world. The production of the report would require minimal resources and would not restrict the President from taking action to protect the country against terrorist threats. What it will do is provide a modest but important measure of transparency, helping to ensure the legitimacy of actions we take to protect the country and our allies from terrorist threats. The amendment will also help fulfill commitments made by the President in his speech last year at NDU and reiterated just yesterday at the U.S. Military Academy. As the President said this week, when it comes to drone strikes, we can be more transparent about both the basis for our actions and the manner in which they're carried out. CIA Director John Brennan has also voiced support for additional transparency, saying of drone strikes that cause civilian casualties, I believe we need to acknowledge it. I believe we need to acknowledge it to our foreign partners. We need to acknowledge it publicly. In the vacuum of official information, estimates of civilian casualties have been put forth by NGOs, sometimes including casualty figures which are substantially inflated in part through the active efforts of our adversaries to mislead about the targets of strikes and the incidence of civilian casualties. The release of this report will not only improve transparency and oversight, but will also provide a counterpoint to the narrative of our enemies that suggests that every strike is on a wedding party. As the President said at West Point, we must not create more enemies than we take off the battlefield. Our efforts against the still highly dangerous threat of al-Qaeda are dependent in part on the perceived legitimacy of our actions, our adherence to law, and our respect for civilian life. All of those interests will be served by requiring this public report, while the disclosure of this information will not reveal the existence of covert operations or restrain the President from taking any action necessary to protect the country. I would urge the committee to make this very simple amendment in order, and I appreciate the chance to testify.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We're coming close to winding down here. Does the committee have any questions on any of these three amendments? Mr. Cole?
One quick question. Frankly, you're three of the best members in this Congress, and people know that. You're all very thoughtful and extremely responsible. I'm curious if with any of your respective amendments, the administration has made any position known to you. Are they opposed? Are they supportive? If you had any contact with them. I must say broadly, really appreciate the idea of bringing transparency. I think you're all doing something that's extremely important. These operations are being taken in the name of the American people. The American people are paying for them, and the American people run a risk when we take them. Not only that we would do something that none of us would hope would happen, that is take innocent life, but that there'll be a retaliatory act, and it's more likely to fall broadly on the American people than the people that ordered the strike in the first place. I really commend all three of you for the impetus, but I am curious if the administration in any way, shape, or form has said if they're supportive or opposed to the action that you're trying to take.
Let's just go down there.
In my case, no. And I really share your concerns about potential precedents for retaliatory acts. I think it's a very valid concern.
Ms. Schakowsky? No. Mr. Schiff?
They haven't taken a formal position. I can share with you what feedback we've gotten. When I raised this issue with Director Brennan, I think his reaction was that it was a proposal worthy of study, so fairly ambiguous in terms of ultimately where they'd come down. A similar provision was adopted in the Senate Intelligence Bill offered by Senator Feinstein. As I understand it, at the request of the DNI, it was withdrawn from that bill. I don't know whether there was a specific objection, but my understanding was they wanted more time to consider how they could be more transparent or perhaps what the impact of it would be. But that's about all the tea leaves that I have been able to see.
That's more than fair, and I just wanted that as a factor, insofar as it exists at all, to take into consideration, although I don't think it's a decisive factor, because, again, I think what the three of you collectively are trying to get at is something that we really need to deal with, and you're to be commended for trying to get at it in a way that's responsible in terms of respecting our own security, but again, making us aware of the actions that are being taken in our name, supposedly on our behalf, but with considerable risk at considerable cost, and with the danger that, again, innocent people are being harmed by actions we take. The last thing in the world that this country needs to engage in, or any of us would want to be part of. So thank you for bringing it before the committee.
Thank you.
Yield back.
Mr. McGovern.
No, I want to thank all three of you for your amendments. I obviously support all of them, including the one that I'm co-sponsoring with Mr. Pitts. I don't see anything wrong with transparency, and and I think there's a tendency. It doesn't matter whether it's a Democrat or a Republican administration. There's a tendency by administrations not to want to offer you things that they don't have to. But on these issues, I think the American people have a right to know what's going on. I think we, I don't know if you were here for the previous panel, but I think we also have a right to know what's happening so that we can better make decisions and better cast our votes. So I hope all three amendments are made in order and look forward to supporting them on the floor. Yield back.
Thank you. Mr. Webster? Mr. Burgess? Mr. Woodall? With that, we thank you for being here. We'll dismiss you. With that, we bring this hearing to a close on H.R. 4765 and H.R. 4681. With that, I also will declare the committee will stand in a recess subject to call of the chair. The goal is obviously to have this before we go down to the floor for votes around the 4:30, 4:45 era, but there will be a 30-minute notice given before we reconvene. So with that, we're in recess.
Rules Committee will come to order. Thank you very much for allowing us an opportunity to gather our preparation together, and the chairman will now be in receipt of a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move the committee grant H.R. 4745, the Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development and Related Agencies Appropriations Act 2015, an open rule. The rule provides 1 hour general debate equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Appropriations. The rule waives all points of order against consideration of the bill. The rule waives points of order against provisions in the bill for failure to comply with Clause 2 of Rule 21. The rule provides that the bill shall be considered for amendment under the 5-minute rule. The rule authorizes the chair to accord priority and recognition to members who have pre-printed their amendments in the congressional record. The rule provides 1 motion to recommit with or without instructions. Section 2 of the rule provides for consideration of H.R. 4681, the Intelligence Authorization Act, for fiscal years 2014-2015 under a structured rule. The rule provides 1 hour general debate equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. The rule waives all points of order against consideration of the bill. The rule makes an order as original text for purpose of amendment, an amendment in the nature of a substitute, consisting of the text of Rules Committee Print 113-45, and provides that it shall be considered as read. The rule waives all points of order against that amendment in the nature of a substitute. The rule makes an order only those further amendments printed in the Rules Committee report and amendments en bloc described in the rule, provides that the amendments printed in the report may be offered only in the order printed in the report, may be offered only by a member designated in the report, shall be considered as read, shall be debatable for the time specified in the report, equally divided and controlled by the proponent and an opponent, shall not be subject to amendment, shall not be subject to a demand for division of the question. The rule waives all points of order against the amendments printed in the report or against amendments en bloc. The rule provides that it shall be in order at any time for the chair of the Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence or his designee to offer amendments en bloc consisting of amendments printed in the report not earlier disposed of. Amendments en bloc shall be considered as read, shall be debated for 20 minutes, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence or their designees, shall not be subject to amendment and shall not be subject to a demand for division of the question. The rule provides 1 motion to recommit with or without instructions. Section 3 of the rule provides that on any legislative day during the period from June 2, 2014 through June 6, 2014, the journal of the proceedings of the previous day shall be considered as approved, and the chair may at any time declare the House adjourned to meet at a date and time to be announced by the chair and declaring the adjournment. Section 4 of the rule provides that the Speaker may appoint members to perform the duties of the chair for the duration of the period and addressed by Section 3. Section 5 of the rule provides that the Committee on Appropriations may at any time before 5 p.m. on Wednesday, June 4, 2014, file privilege reports to accompany measures making appropriations for the fiscal year ending September 30, 2015. Finally, Section 6 of the rule provides that House Resolution 567 is amended to provide that the chair of the Benghazi Select Committee may authorize travel consistent with other committees.
You know, I heard the motion from the gentleman from North Carolina. Is there another amendment or discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, a couple of things.
Comes recognized.
First of all, I do not plan to raise any objections tonight to the provision that has been added to this rule to amend the Benghazi Select Committee resolution. But during the debate on the floor tomorrow, I'm going to be handling the rule. I plan to engage my colleagues to seek some assurances about how this authority will be used, and I just wanted to get that on the record.
I appreciate the gentleman. In fact, I will make myself available, and I will work with your team to make sure that we do that either up front or at the beginning or at the end. And
I appreciate
I'll
that.
make myself available.
And I'd like to ask unanimous consent to insert in the record the statements by Representative John Carney and Sheila Jackson-Lee.
Without objection.
And I have an amendment to the rule. I move that the committee grant H.R. 4681 an open rule so that all members have the opportunity to offer amendments to the bill on the floor.
You now heard the amendment by the gentleman. Is there further discussion? Those in favor of the government amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no.
No.
Noes have it. Noes have it.
Mr. Chairman, I have another amendment to the rule. I move that the committee make an order and give the necessary waivers for the amendment to H.R. 4681 by Representative Pitts, myself, and several others, amendment number 20, which would require reports from the administration to further transparency as it relates to the use of targeted lethal force by the use of remotely piloted aircraft. And I've been assured that this amendment is germane.
Discussion. No discussion. Those in favor of the McGovern amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. No. The noes have it.
I thought the ayes sounded louder, but more enthusiastic.
No, noes have it. Does gentleman have further amendment?
I have no other amendments.
Gentleman has no other amendments at this time. The vote will now be on the motion from the gentlewoman from North Carolina. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no.
No.
The ayes have it. The ayes have it. The no was very loud and did not carry. The ayes have it.
Did you say you did not care or did not carry?
I said I do care. I do carry. Could not carry the day, though.
Okay. Thank you.
The motion is agreed to.
Good effort, though.
It was.
Tried.
The gentleman, Mr. Bishop, will be handling this for Republicans.
And I will be handling for Democrats.
Gentleman, Mr. McGovern, will be handling this for Democrats. I'd like to make an announcement, if I can. We, from time to time, have great things happen to the committee. Well, another great thing has happened today, and that is, if we all look dead ahead, center of the stage, the gentleman Ted Moreland from Dallas, Texas, who is a law student at William and Mary, has joined the Rules Committee staff as a bright young aspiring to-be lawyer and will be as an intern with us this summer. Mr. Moreland, thank you very much for taking time to be with us. We hope you learn a lot, and most of all, I hope this is a great summer for you. Thank you very much. I do not anticipate, because this is Thursday, that we have any other action ahead of us in the committee, and so I would like to thank everybody for their time today, remembering again that we have Mrs. Slaughter in our thoughts and prayers for her family. The committee is now done with its work for the week.